Hello everybody, Harry from GMAT Ninja here, and welcome to episode 17 in our comprehensive sentence correction series for the GMAT and the executive assessment. So in this episode, we're going to look at three small things that don't come up that often, but they can make a difference to how quickly and efficiently you can answer a GMAT sentence correction question. So those three things are whether you should use if or whether you should use whether in a sentence, or due to versus because, or the use of like versus the use of such as. Now, I'm going to structure this video a little differently to some of the others. I'll split this video into three sections, one for each of our three things. And in each section, we'll take a closer look at the mechanics of that thing. And then we'll tackle an official question so that you can see it in the action and see how the GMAT uses it in an official question. So without any further ado, we'll get started. I'm going to see you back here in a couple of seconds to take a look at the first of our three things, if versus whether. Okay, so section one of this video is about the use of if versus the use of whether. So rather than just tell you exactly how the GMAT uses it, I'm going to start this section with a little test. I'm going to put 4 sentences on the screen for 30 seconds or so, and what I'd like you to do is to decide if the GMAT would consider any of those 4 sentences as correct. Now, it's possible that all of them are correct, none of them are correct, or only some of them are correct. Make a note of which ones you think would be acceptable in a GMAT sentence correction question, and we'll take a closer look at this issue in about 30 seconds' time. Right, so I'll see you back here very soon. Okay, as ever, if you need a little more time to think about this question, now's your chance to pause the video before I take it away so that we can take a look at it together. All right, so I was a bit mean in the setup for this one, just asking you to determine whether the use of if or the use of whether was correct in this sentence, because the challenge here is that both of them can be used in a sentence correction question as long as they're used in the right way. So our first job when we're looking at these 4 examples is to think about what this sentence is trying to say. So in this setup, all 4 of them they're really trying to say the same thing. And what they're trying to say is that if I'm the one in the sentence, then I don't know about the chance of rain for that day. Now, what the GMAT would say is that it could rain or not. And really what we're saying here is that I don't know which of those 2 choices is going to happen. Now, when you're choosing between 2 choices, the GMAT would say that you can't use the word if. You use the word whether instead. So this first example, I don't know if it will rain today, would not be correct on the GMAT because I'm choosing between whether it will rain or whether it will not rain. You can use the word if, but it needs to be used in a slightly different context. As you can see down with this extra example down at the bottom here, if it starts raining today, I'll put up my umbrella. You've got this if here, and we set up a scenario, and then later on we get a consequence. You can use the word if it's called an if-then clause. If it starts raining, then I'll put up my umbrella. So in that scenario, we can use the word if, but in this sentence that we gave you, the GMAT would say that this first example, that is not correct. We can't use the word if we're choosing between 2 options. Well, that leaves us with option 2, 3, and 4. All right, all of them very similar, all of them using the word whether, but 2 has this whether or not, and 3 says, I don't know whether it will rain today or not. Now, in both cases, the GMAT would say that the or not is implied, and so you don't need it. It's kind of it's a redundancy to say, I don't know whether or not it will rain, because the or not is implied, and you can just say, I don't know whether it will rain. So because of that, we can cross out option 2 and option 3. Again, I'm not saying that they're wrong in English grammar. They certainly sound okay to me, but on the GMAT, in sentence correction, whether or not is redundant, and we can cross those options out. And the only example that works here would be number 4. I don't know whether it will rain today. All right, so that's the mechanics behind it. And now we'll take a look at how this is going to work in an official question. So I'll get one up on the screen. We'll give you a couple of minutes to take a look at it, and I'll see you back here. Just as before, as we've done with a lot of these videos, there are other things that are going to be in this question because you're watching this one, because we're talking about if versus whether here, please take a look at those issues first. And then once you've dealt with those, then go and look at other things as we get to an answer. All right, I'll get this up on the screen and we'll see you back here in a couple of minutes' time. Okay, if you need a little more time, now's your chance to pause the video before I take this away so that we can work towards an answer together. All right, so before this question went up on the screen, I asked you to take a look at the if versus whether issue first, because that's what we're dealing with in this part of the video. Now, thankfully, it's nice and obvious right at the start of the answer choices. So we're going to be able to get rid of either 2 or 3 answer choices very quickly. So the way we'll do that is in the same way we did with that rain question right at the start of this section, is to look at the overall sentence to say, am I setting up an if-then clause, or are we trying to choose between 2 options? Now, the original sentence tells us about a proposal that's been made to trim the horns from rhinoceroses, and then it asks a question about the tourists. It asks, will these tourists continue to visit the game parks? And then there's the implied bit of, will they not? As we say there, that we're trying to choose whether tourists will continue to visit the game parks or not visit the game parks. As you can see from what I'm saying, yeah, we're setting up this choice between 2 options. Will the tourists continue to visit the game parks or will they not visit the game parks? So in that case, we're not setting up an if-then clause. We're choosing between 2 options. So we should use whether in this sentence, and I can cross out D and E because they are using if. And so we're 2 answer choices down very quickly. And now we've dealt with that if versus whether issue, and we can take a closer look at A, B, and C. Now, just going alphabetically, in A, there's a couple of things that hopefully you've spotted here. First of all, we've got this and. So we're dealing with parallelism. Now, we can check that very quickly. After the and, I've got C. The nearest thing that makes sense to be parallel to is going to be this visit here. And so whether the tourists will continue to visit the game parks or whether the tourists will continue to see the rhinoceroses. To me, the parallelism sounds okay there. So I'm going to put that to one side and see if there's anything else in A. Now, the other thing that I hope is jumping off the page at you is that we've got a pronoun here later in the sentence. Now, we've got a plural pronoun. We should go take a look at what the plural nouns are that could refer to. Now, first option, I've got the rhinoceroses there, but I've also got the game parks and potentially the tourists. Now, from the context of the sentence, I know this should be the rhinoceroses. Tourists and game park don't generally have horns that could be trimmed. Rhinoceroses do. This sentence is trying to talk about the rhinoceroses, but grammatically, the there could refer to any of those 3. Now, ambiguous pronouns by themselves, because that's the only thing I've got in A, are not enough to get rid of this answer choice at this stage, but it's something I definitely don't like about it. For now, I'm going to put it to one side. If I get a better option, I'll go for the better option. But if I can cross out B and C, then A is going to be my answer, and I'm going to need to stick with it. So moving on to B here, we don't have any parallelism this time, but I've still got that plural pronoun at the end of B. Now, again, what are the things it could refer to? This time I've got game parks, I've got tourists. There are still the rhinoceroses, but those are way back at the beginning of the initial sentence outside the underlined portion. Now, again, the context of the sentence tells me that there, because it's their horns, it's going to be the rhinoceroses the sentence is trying to talk about. But B is, it's still ambiguous, and the thing that it should refer to is even further away than it was in A. So I don't like either of A or B, but right now I don't have anything that I can just pin down and say that is why I'm getting rid of it. So let's take a look at C, and hopefully we'll find a better option here. So again, we've got the weather at the beginning that we've said is okay. There is no parallelism in this one, and this time there isn't any pronoun to deal with. That where the there was in the other two options, we've now got the animal's horns. And so C has removed that opportunity for any ambiguity in the question. C fixes all the issues I had with A and B, and C doesn't introduce any new issues of its own. There's nothing else in this that I could use to make an elimination. And so on that basis, because C is better than B and A, I can cross out these two options, A and B. I can say that C is going to be my final answer here. So as you can see, we use the if versus whether issue to get rid of two answer choices very quickly. Then we took a look at the others. We had to deal with some ambiguous pronouns in this one, but that was enough to get us to a final answer here. All right, so that's the first of our three things in this video. Now, we'll take a second. Let me clean the board up, and we'll get back to looking at the next of our the next of our three things. We'll take a look at due to versus because. I'll see you back here in just 1 second. Okay, so in this second of our three-part video, we're going to be looking at the difference between how the GMAT uses due to versus how it uses because. Now, just like the first part, I'm going to start this section with a little test. So I'll put up another 4 sentences on the screen for 30 seconds or so, and it's up to you to try and choose which of the 4 you think the GMAT would consider the correct option. Now, just like before, it's possible that all of them are correct, or it's possible that none of them are correct, or maybe half of them, or only some of them. So you've got 30 seconds, make a note of which ones you think would be acceptable in a GMAT sentence correction question, and we'll take a closer look at this issue in about 30 seconds. All right, I'll see you back here very soon. Okay, now's your chance to pause it if you need a little more time on this one. I'm going to take this one away so that we can take a closer look. All right, so before we jump into this one, full disclosure here, if I was speaking in normal day-to-day living, I don't really have a problem with any of these. But GMAT sentence correction is a very specific way of doing things. And so if you're looking at this just going, hang on, what you're saying sounds crazy, I kind of agree with you, but we've got to do things the way the GMAT does because they're the ones that write the question. So when you're choosing between due to and because here, the thing that we need to look at is what is it that we're explaining? Now, that can cause a bit of confusion. This bit at the end, the captain's performance, that is the explanation for something. Now, the thing that we're trying to explain, in this case, is actually up at the start of this sentence. In 1 and 2, it's that the team won, and in 3 and 4, it's the team's victory. Now, the way the GMAT will do this is they will say that if you are explaining an action, in this case, number 1 and number 2, the team won, and then we're providing a reason for that. If you're describing an action, if you're giving a reason for an action, you should use because of. So in this case, number 1 is not correct, and number 2 is the one we should use. Now, 3 and 4 are doing something slightly differently. The team's victory here, that's a noun. This is not an action. And so when you're describing a noun, that's when you use due to. So in this case, we'd cross number 4 out, and I would say that 2 and 3 are the ones the GMAT would go about using here. So when you're describing an action here, in this case, the team won, that's when we use because of. And when we're describing a noun, the team's victory, that's when we use due to. All right, so that's how it works. That's the mechanics of it. Now we're going to put it into action in a real official question. So just like before, you've got a couple of minutes to take a look at this one. Please take a look at the due to versus because thing first, because that's what we're dealing with here. Then we'll get into the other issues afterwards. All right, you've got a couple of minutes. I'll see you back here very soon. All right, now's a chance to pause the video if you need a little more time to work on this one. I'm going to take it away now so that we can take a closer look. Now, just like the last one, I asked you to take a look at this due to versus because issue first, because that's what we're working on here. And again, just like the last one, it's nice and obvious right at the start of these answer choices. So we're going to be 2 or 3 answer choices down very quickly. Now, the first thing we need to do with this question is to decide what is it that we're trying to explain. What is it that is because or due to something in this question? Now, the mistake that lots of people make with this one is to talk about the plunging prices or the oversupply, but that is the explanation for something. The thing that we're trying to explain is that the manufacturer has announced. So it's the action of announcing. We're trying to explain why the manufacturer would announce something. In this case, the manufacturer has announced something is an action. As we said, if we're trying to explain an action, we should use because. We should not use due to. And so for that reason, I can get rid of D and E. So because we're trying to explain an action, the action of announcing something, we can't use due to, D and E go. All right, so now we're left with A, B, and C. And just like the last question, once we've dealt with this due to because thing, I'm going to need to go looking for something else. So that we're looking for things that might jump off the page at you. And the first thing that I hope you can see in this question is that we've got a couple of whiches here. We'll deal with the one in C first. So we've got a which resulted from an oversupply. Now the which should modify the noun that comes immediately before the comma. But in this case, we don't have a noun. It's computer chip prices have been sent plunging. The way the GMAT works, the which is going to be a noun modifier. There is no noun there to modify, and so that we can cross C out for that reason. All right, now B, there's another which here, so we'll go and check that out first. Now this case, we've got computer chips just before the comma. Now you might make an argument that the actual noun, the full noun, is plunging prices for computer chips. And in this case, sometimes you get this scenario where the noun is a bit bigger. Plunging prices for computer chips can be modified by this which. But the problem here is that at both of those options, we've got is. Something is due to an oversupply. Computer chips is plural. Plunging prices for computer chips, that's plural as well. So we can't modify either of those with which is due to an oversupply. And so for that reason, this modification doesn't work either. And so we can cross B out, which leaves us with A. Now, you might want to take a quick read of A just to check that there's nothing wrong with it there. We've got the because that we said right at the beginning we need because we're modifying an action here, and there's no other issues. We've got rid of the which. There's nothing else in there that might jump off the page at you. And so for that reason, A is going to be our answer to this one. So just like the last thing when we were looking at the if versus whether, this case, the due to versus because, we got rid of two answer choices very quickly. That made the question much easier, and then we could go looking for the other things. All right, that we've got one more of these three things to take a look at, and that's going to be looking at like versus such as. So just like before, I'll see you back here in a couple of seconds to take a look at that third of our three things. Okay, the third of our three things is how the GMAT uses the word like versus how the GMAT uses the word such as. So I hope you're getting the hang of this now. I'm going to put another 4 sentences up on the screen, and I want you to take a look for 30 seconds and try to decide whether the GMAT would consider any of those 4 sentences correct. Just like the other options, it's possible that all of them are right, none of them are right, or maybe only some of them are right. Make a note of which ones you think would be acceptable in a GMAT sentence correction question, and we'll take a closer look at this issue in about 30 seconds' time. Okay, now's your chance to pause the video if you need a little more time to take a look at this one. But for now, I'm going to take those examples away so that we can take a look at these together. All right, so like some of the others, this is one of those times where I can see myself saying some of these, I can see myself writing some of these, but that doesn't really matter. Don't go into these questions saying this is how I would do it, because what really matters is just how would the GMAT do it. Now, of these 4 examples, the GMAT would say 2 of them are okay and 2 of them are not okay. We're going to take a look at the number 1 first. Now, this, the GMAT would not like. We can cross this out. The GMAT's not going to go for this example. But a quick disclaimer here, we'll explain why. Quick disclaimer, this one is not grammatically incorrect. We're getting rid of this on a meaning basis. Now, this sentence, if we read it very literally in the way the GMAT asks you to do, this sentence, number 1, does not say that sheep and Highland cows are common in Scotland. It says that animals like sheep and Highland cows are common in Scotland. Maybe goats that look like sheep and bison that look like Highland cows, and those animals are common in Scotland. Now, taking a look, again, I know this is a very shortened sentence, so there isn't much context. But if you look around, we've got other options, animals such as sheep and Highland cows. In number 2, it's very definitely, it's the sheep and the Highland cows that are common in Scotland. And so on a meaning basis, number 1's going to go because of the use of this like here. Number 3, for the same reason, we've got a like here. Same meaning issue that we had in number 1. It's not necessarily the animals in the list that are common in Scotland. It's other ones that look like them. And why would you say things that way when you could just tell me what these animals are? And so number 1 and number 3 are out. Now, it's possible that there could be an exception where you wanted to use like to introduce these examples. Again, if I wanted to write that the sheep and Highland cows, but really mean the goats and the bison, then I could write it this way, which is why I say it's not grammatically wrong. But that exception is so rare that it's like, yeah, you're not going to see it, or you can almost certainly say you're not going to see it. You might want to just take half a second just to look at the context of the sentence, just go, am I sure? But when you see a like introducing a set of examples in a GMAT sentence correction question, you can be 99.9% sure that you're going to cross that one out. All right, now that leaves us with number 2 and number 4. Number 2, this is absolutely fine on the GMAT, no problems at all. And even though number 4 to me sounds very awkward, this one's okay too. So as long as using such as, and it can have, in this case, the animals, it can have what you're describing, what you're giving the examples of, it can have those between the such and the as, but you should use such as to introduce a set of examples here. And that's how the GMAT does it. Doesn't matter how awkward I think number 4 is, that's the way we're going to deal with things. All right, so for the final time today, I'm going to get an official question up on the screen so that we can see this in practice. Like we've done with the other two, please take a look at the like versus such as issue first before you go dealing with some other things. And I'll see you back here in a couple of minutes so that we can take a look at this question together. Okay, for the final time today, if you need a little more time to work on this one, now's your chance to pause the video, but I'm going to take it away so that we can take a look at this one together. All right, so like we've done with the other official questions in this video, I'm first going to focus on the thing we're dealing with in this section, which is that like versus such as issue when we're introducing a set of examples. So what I'm hoping jumped off the page at you as you went through A was that we've got this like introducing these corn and beans. Now, as we said a couple of minutes ago, I should not be using like to introduce a set of examples. I know I said there were exceptions earlier, but they are very rare, and there is no reason to think that this is one of those exceptions. There's no reason to think that this question is talking about, I don't know, rice and potatoes instead and has used corn and beans there. Yes, there are exceptions, but they're astonishingly rare, and you need a really good reason to use like to introduce a set of examples, especially when we've got other options. B and D use such as and such crops as. We've got better options elsewhere. Yes, there are exceptions, but they are so rare that it's really not worth worrying about too much. We can almost default to saying we've got a like, we've got some examples, therefore I can cross A out. And because C has like introducing the same corn and beans, and E has such crops like introducing the corn and beans, for exactly the same reason, I can cross out C and E. And that leaves me with B and D, which use crops such as or such crops as. So B and D are introducing a set of examples in the right way for the GMAT, so I can leave those in, and we've crossed 3 answer choices out very quickly. And now all I have to do is decide between B and D. All right, so now that we've dealt with the like versus such as thing, I can go looking for other things in these answer choices. And the next thing that I hope jumped off the page at you is this and that we've got here. And so we've got some parallelism in B and D that we should go and check. All right, so I'll go and deal with D first. After the and, I've got exploiting. I've got an ing word, some kind of, in this case, probably some kind of modifier. But I don't have anything else that would be parallel to exploiting in this sentence. I've got a 3-item list. I can tell that from how the sentence is structured, but exploiting would then be parallel to the harvest and their cultivation. And those three things, okay, we've got a definite noun. Yeah, cultivation's a noun, then the Machika own that noun. So we've got possessive there, we've got a noun here, we've got a modifier here. These three things aren't parallel. We do not have a parallel list in D. And so for that reason, I can cross D out, and we can say that B is going to be the answer here. Now we can take a quick look at the parallelism just to check, just to sort of compare it to D. In B, I've got the exploitation, I've got the harvesting, and I've got the cultivation. Again, in this case, I've got noun, noun, noun. I've got three nouns that can be parallel in order and can all fit in with the stem that the elaborate society, based on the cultivation, based on the harvesting, and based on the exploitation, the parallelism works in B. I've got the right use of such crops as to introduce the set of examples. I'm not using like there. So for those reasons, B is going to be our answer to this question and not any of the other choices. All right, so there's three small things that, as we said, they don't come up very often, but as I hope we've shown in this video, when they do, they can be very helpful. They can get rid of 2 or 3 answer choices very quickly. So I hope you can incorporate that into what you're doing with sentence correction. As I say, I hope this video has been helpful, and we look forward to seeing you back here for one of our other sentence correction videos. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you again soon.